Hey guys, how's it going? I'm sure you've gathered by the title of this video that it's going to be just probably a somewhat long video of me rambling, so I apologize. And I'm probably going to be reading from notes that I've written about it, so you'll have to excuse me if I keep looking back and forth, so that's all that is. But yeah, I wanted to talk about tone wood because I've been reading about it for a while. And I've been seeing, there's a pretty big debate on YouTube, or at least there was for a little while, and it gets pretty intense. So I'm just gonna chip in my 2 cents, and this is my opinion, and I'm not claiming to be an expert on the subject or anything like that, but I do have a few issues. So let's get into it. So first of all, whether you believe that tone wood is real or not, it's irrelevant, because ultimately what it comes down to is whether or not your rig sounds good to you. And that's the thing that people don't seem to remember a lot, is that tone is an opinion. So you could have a tone that sounds amazing to you, and somebody else could walk in and hear you playing that tone and immediately hate it. Doesn't mean it's bad, just means that you like it and they don't. And that's an important distinction to make. So really, if it sounds good to you, it is good. And if you think that it's because of your wood, you have every right to think that, and nobody's going to take that away from you. Now, having said that, I will say that I'm of the opinion that tone wood is a myth. Now, I'm not saying that people who believe in tone woods are wrong. But what I am saying is that I've listened to their arguments and I've found them very difficult to believe and accept, so I don't. Now, there's a few factors that led me to this conclusion, so I'll discuss a couple of the reasons here so you can sort of get an idea of my mental processes through this. So the first reason is the way that pickups work. So, and I'm going to keep this discussion in the electric guitar realm because it's just easier. So, a pickup, in the most basic terms, is basically a magnet wrapped in a coil of wire, and when a magnetic material passes through the magnetic field of the pickup, it generates a small current, which, when you send it to an amplifier, becomes your guitar signal. Or becomes your sound, your tone, right? Now that happens because the strings are made out of magnetic material, so nickel, steel, and so on. And they have to be, or else they wouldn't be, or they wouldn't generate a field when they pass through the magnetic field of the pickup. They wouldn't generate a signal. So wood is not magnetic. So how can the wood affect the amplified signal, which again is the strings vibrating through the magnetic field of the pickup? How can the wood affect the tone if there's no magnetic material in the wood to affect the or to generate any current in the pickups? It's a simple question, and I haven't heard anybody answer that satisfactorily, if that's a word. I haven't heard anybody try to answer that in a way that is satisfying enough for me. So that's my first, issue with the tone wood debate. Now the other thing that led me to my conclusion is the arguments of the people who do believe in tone wood, that try to, offer up arguments and support of tone wood. And I have issue with their arguments because a lot of them aren't really arguments at all. So they tend to resort to phrases like, oh, everybody knows that wood affects tone, or they have like testimonials either from themselves or from their friends or from other people saying, oh, well, I played an ash body guitar and it sounds totally different than the alder body guitar that I have. And even builders and famous guitarists are guilty of that. And basically, all that is opinion. So, the argument that everybody knows that it's true is really problematic for me, and I don't like it at all, because it implies that there's some sort of big secret that has been passed down through the generations and nobody knows where it started and that kind of thing. So, it's one of those things where if you don't accept that, it's like there's something that you're not in on and that you're too slow to get it or something. That's the implication behind that. So it's not really an argument at all, because there's no truth to it. It's just a claim that everybody knows is true. Well, who's everybody and how do they know it's true, right? That's my question. So, it just kind of pisses me off. And the problem with that as well is when you mention evidence, it pisses other people off, because they don't want to have to support what they believe with real evidence. They'd just rather have it go on questions. It's a lot like religion, I've noticed. So, yeah, there's that part of it for me. And so I don't tend to accept what people say when they talk about stuff like that, unless they can offer me some kind of evidence that I can look at and either accept or reject based on what I know, or at the very least they could tell me their mental processes that led to their conclusion, so that I could sort of evaluate how they got to the point that they got to. But usually you don't even get that. And they like to cite famous guitar players or builders, luthiers, that kind of thing. And just because somebody is a famous guitar player doesn't necessarily mean that they know about the construction or the function of their instruments. I watch rig rundowns on the Premier Guitar YouTube channel, and a lot of times the actual guitar player doesn't do the rig rundown of their own rig because they don't know how it works. Their tech does. They just know how to play it. So, So, one more thing I'd like to go into a little bit more detail about is the argument where people say that they've played guitars with two different body woods and that they sound different. And I haven't seen a demonstration yet that is very scientific about that. And I recall a pretty highly viewed video by Rob Chapman and Lee Anderton where they basically enacted that argument. So they both had guitars. They were the same model guitar, they had the same pickups, the same whatever. Everything about the guitars was supposed to be identical except for the body woods. Now here's my issue with that. Back when I was young and in science class, in high school, things like that, I was taught that when you perform an experiment, or when you construct an experiment, the idea is to eliminate every variable that you can except for the variable that you're testing. And also, the more variables that you have in your experiment, the harder it is to eliminate every variable except the one you want to test. So what does that mean for me? Well, basically, if you want to test tone wood scientifically, you're going to have to be a lot more rigid in your testing than in the Rob Chapman video. Now, in that video, they said the guitars had the same hardware, same pickups, same neck, same construction, and so on. But technically, no, none of those are the same within the boundaries of the experiment they were trying to do. For instance, a lot of pickup manufacturers, they can make the same model pickup, and you could have 5 or 6 pickups of the same model, and just checking them all on a meter, they will all have different resistances. So it may be nitpicky, but I'm not the one trying to construct an experiment that's believable. So basically, if you want to test tone wood properly, in my mind, and I don't think anybody's actually thought about this, except maybe Will's Easy Guitar. He did something really close to this. But here's what you need to do when you want to test tone wood scientifically. So first of all, you need to use only one guitar. That's it. And the reason for that is everything on that guitar is a variable. And the only way to keep those variables consistent is to use the exact same pieces. So that means same strings, same hardware, same pickups, and I mean same as in of the same guitar, not same model. You know what I mean? So the same hardware and everything that you used with the first body would have to be recycled into the next guitar, set up exactly the same, you know, things like that. So you would record that one guitar either through a cable and into an amp and into a microphone, whatever your preferred recording method is, that's how you would record it. You would have to use the same pick through all the tests. You would need to pick in the exact same place every time. Also with the same pressure, the same velocity, the same angle of the pick every single time you test. Then once you have a sufficient buildup of data, you'd have to separate the neck from the body, dismantle all the hardware from the body, and keep the same strings while you install all of the hardware used in your test to a body with a different wood species. Then you would continue testing on that incarnation of the guitar, and you'd have to follow all the same guidelines. And one of the other key things you'd have to do is set up some sort of guidelines as to what makes a sound different. So are you just going to be using your ears? Because that's not good enough for me. People are biased, and hearing can be somewhat unreliable, or at least inconsistent. So you'd have to use something, in my opinion, you'd have to use something like an oscilloscope. That would definitely be better. And when you're looking for differences in the sounds, especially if you have an oscilloscope, you can tell which frequency the differences are at. So another important thing to ask yourself is, do those frequencies lie within the range of human hearing? Because if they don't, then it's irrelevant whether there is a change or not, because you wouldn't be able to hear it. So you see how complicated this is getting? And I'm supposed to believe that some guy who statistically has a much higher chance of tinnitus than me can hear the difference between wood species? I don't buy it. So yeah, that's why, well, those are a couple of reasons why I don't believe in the whole tone wood thing. And so I hope this was a little less like a rant and a little more like an informative video for you. I definitely don't claim to be an expert, but you don't have to be an expert to question something. So if the explanations aren't good enough, then they aren't reason enough for me to believe. So that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for watching, and try to keep the discussion civil if you can in the comments. So take it easy, guys. I'll see you next time.